Okay, so now we're in the next section. We're going to be talking about functions, input, and outputs. Now, this section is a little long, so I'm going to take my time. So it's going to span over a couple of videos, maybe 3, maybe 4, never know. But I want to take my time to explain certain concepts here to make sure you understand it and it's starting to stick. So I'm going to give examples. We're going to work through the code together. So it's going to help you to understand it. If you're arriving at this channel and you're not a part of the cohort, the curriculum is free. All you have to do is click the link in the description and you can follow along. Okay, let's get into the curriculum. Functions, input, and output. In the introduction to this chapter, we use the metaphor of the function machine, noting that the machine takes input and provides output. This section focuses on the details of these two aspects of function behavior. Now, remember what I said earlier. Think of functions like your house is the software. And in your house, you have an HVAC system. That system is comprised of the central air unit, the furnace, and also a water heater. If you in a more modern home, some homes you may have outdoor air conditioning window units. But for this example, these are the 3 types of things that makes up your HVAC system. But each one work independently. Your central air unit is like a function. Your furnace is a function, as well as your water heater. But yet they're all connected, part of a system. And later on, we're going to go into the third principle of OOP. I'm introducing it to you today as planting a seed of inheritance. But here, we need to understand what functions are, because as a newbie, as a beginner, this is going to confuse you. So I'm going to take my time to make sure I break it down to you. So some functions return values that are useful. In particular, the type conversion functions convert input to specified data type and returns the results, calling number the string 3.14 and returns the value number 3.14. Returning a value. To return a value from functions that we create, we can use a return statement. A return statement has the form, return some value. Remember that. This used to confuse me for a while, understanding how to use the return. And it's so important to understand. You're going to learn you don't have to make a correct function or syntactically correct function with the return. You don't have to have it, but it's useless. So every function needs a return to be useful. Remember, we want to be programmed to be able to do what we want it to do. Now, we say here where some value is any value, and we're going to explain. Here's an example. This function has a single parameter n, which is expected to be a positive integer. It returns the sum 1 plus 2 plus ... n, which I believe is a factoid. Now, you do want to kind of understand how that works so you can understand how this particular function is created. So we have a function and we named it sum to n, and we're passing it in the parameter. How do I know this is a parameter? Because I am defining the function with the function keyword. This is a parameter. This same function that I'm calling is now passing the argument. Now, as we look at this code, you want to be sure you understand how do we get to this result, 6. So let's play around with this so you can understand how to write this code and understand how to get the result. So we're going to go to our trusty console here, and then I'm going to clear that out. I'm going to copy this in, paste it in, and we see we have the function. As you read it, now understand something about functions, and I'm gonna drill this home. A function isn't like any other piece of your code. It's only going to be activated once it is invoked. Because you define this function right here, it doesn't do anything. So when we talk about the DOM and how it goes line by line, and with JavaScript, because it's an imperative language, the function can be created in any order. It's how you call it or invoke it. Right here, we're invoking it. Now the compiler is reading line by line. So let's go ahead and hit enter. We get 6. Now notice here, we got that undefined. Remember what I said? It's all about the return. But you said, hey, there's a return right here. But no, we have printed it to the console with console.log. Console.log doesn't have a return. All it's doing is printing whatever is in between these parentheses to the console. So let's look at this. This is the first thing we want to tackle. So I'm pushing my up key. I don't have to use console.log to print. Understand something about when we write our code. We may use console.log for debugging, but we don't put console.log in our code. We're going to call this, or we're going to invoke this function by just using the function name. Now I hit return. The same thing, right? 6. But notice the undefined is not there because it is run through the code and it printed it, but now it's undefined because to the compiler, sum to n is not defined because console.log didn't return anything. You got to practice this to understand. The next point I want to make is, how do I know that the answer is 6? How did we get to 6? Now remember, we're going to use our console.logs to be able to understand how we got to 6. Now understand something here. I've declared and then initialized a variable called sum. Now you should be able to identify here that I'm using a pattern, the accumulator pattern. You just learned about this. Because why? I'm initializing it at 0 and I'm going to increment it by 1, or add it by 1 because I'm using a compound operator. And so we remember what this is basically saying is this right here. If I do sum plus 1, if I run this, I get the same result. The other way was just a shortcut. So now notice here that this return sum is on the outside of the for loop, but it's still within the function. We're going to go over that in a moment, but I want you to understand this. So here I want to know, how did I come up with that actual number? So I'm going to do a console.log, and what's the first thing I want to console.log? I want to console.log I. So let me hit enter. So now what did it do? I see it loop through and it's storing all of the particular iterations. I put in the number 3, but notice here I have an equal sign. I is less than equal to n. So whatever, I want everything before it less than, but also including whatever that number is. That's why we have the 3. If I take this equal sign off, let's look at that. I take that equal sign off and now run it. It only gives me 0, 1, 2. I was expecting that. This is the outcome. And notice here that it's not 6 anymore. So, okay, my answer is not 6. Okay, I need some more information. I need to understand, how did I get to 6? So I'm going to put my equal back in, and then I'm going to console.log another thing. What do I want to console.log now? Well, what I want to console.log, I believe I want to console.log sum. And now I'm going to run it. So now it's going through and it's letting me see, okay, I see what it's iterating over, what it's storing. As we go through the loop, I can see what it's doing. But again, it's kind of bumped together. And what I can do is, let me push up. I'm going to add another console.log so I can, and you can do this in your code just to see what's going on. So all I'm going to do is add a string, and then I'm going to add something to divide it. You can do this just to help you see things better. Let me do it. So now I'm separating. So it iterates over 1, stores 0. 0 is my first number. And so now I'm going 1, 1, 2, but then I notice it, okay, there's a 3. So what is it telling me? That this 1 and this 2 was added together to get 3, because my compound operator told me, or I created it to add those numbers together. Then it goes and prints 3. 3 is less than equal to n, which is 3. It stores 3, and now it just adds this 3 and this 3 together. That's how I got 6. Okay, so that's making a little bit more sense to me. But now understand something where we talked about pure functions and we talked about side effect functions. Is this a pure function? I want you to look at it, and I want you to put your answer into the actual comments. Now, why am I saying this? Because remember, a pure function, the data that you input is going to be the same output every time. So 3 should always get 6. If I put 3 in and it gets 7, then that means it's not pure. I gave you a hint. So go ahead, and I want you to give me your answers so we can start the dialogue. So I just wanted to kind of go over this a little bit. I'm going to build upon this as we go further, okay? So I'm getting ready to end this video, but I just want to read this little piece, 2 paragraphs. Notice this: the sum to n does not print anything. The output comes out with the final line of the program, which prints the value returned by the function called sum to n, which we put in 3. Now that we have return statements in our coding toolbox, we will very rarely print anything within a function. If we want to see the value returned by a function, then we must print it after calling the function. All right, question. The function sum to n uses a pattern that we have seen previously. What is it called? All right, so I'm gonna stop it there, and we're gonna go into the return section. Okay, I've kind of touched on some things, kind of show you how it works so it can stick. So that's the end of this particular video for this section. I'll see you in the next section to finish going over the next examples. Okay, that's the end of this video. Remember, the more you do, the more you improve. Okay.